On Christmas morning, my sister dumped her coffee on my lap and said, "Consider it a gift. It's the only one you'll ever get." My parents laughed. I just smiled, went to my room, and transferred the title of her car. By sunrise, she walked outside to an empty driveway. I, 32M, had been the family punching bag for as long as I could remember. Christmas morning arrived with the usual chaos in our household. My sister breezed into the dining room wearing designer pajamas that probably cost more than my rent, her hair perfectly styled even at 7 in the morning. Mom had gone all out with the breakfast spread, as she always did when my sister came home. The golden child's visits were treated like state occasions. I sat quietly at the table with my black coffee, watching everyone fawn over her latest accomplishments. She had just closed some big real estate deal, or so she claimed. My parents hung on every word like she was announcing a cure for cancer. Meanwhile, I had been working 2 jobs for the past 3 years, trying to build something stable, and nobody had asked me a single question about my life in months. The resentment had been building for years, but I had learned to swallow it. Being the scapegoat was my role in this family dynamic, assigned to me somewhere around middle school when my sister discovered she could redirect any blame in my direction. My parents enabled it, always excusing her behavior while holding me to impossible standards. That morning, though, something shifted. My sister walked past me carrying her overpriced latte, the kind she always made a show of bringing from the expensive cafe downtown. She stopped beside my chair, looked down at me with that familiar contempt in her eyes, and then tipped the entire cup directly onto my lap. The hot liquid soaked through my jeans instantly, burning my skin. She leaned down and said those words that would echo in my head for hours afterward. She told me to consider it a gift, said it was the only one I would ever get from her. My parents erupted in laughter. Dad actually slapped the table. Mom covered her mouth, her eyes watering with amusement. I sat there, coffee dripping onto the floor, my thighs burning, and I smiled. Just smiled. Nobody expected that reaction. My sister's face flickered with confusion for a moment before she turned away, satisfied with her performance. I excused myself calmly, walked upstairs to my room, and closed the door. My hands were shaking, but not from anger anymore. Something cold and clear had settled over me. I changed my pants, cleaned myself up, and then sat down at my desk. The car title sat in my filing cabinet, right where I had kept it for the past year. Let me explain that part. A year ago, my sister had gotten into serious financial trouble. Despite her big talk and fancy lifestyle, she was drowning in debt from bad investments and reckless spending. She needed a car for her new job but had such terrible credit that no dealership would finance her. She came to me, desperate, actually crying real tears for once. She begged me to buy a car and put it in my name, promised she would make every payment, swore she would transfer everything to her name once her credit improved. I was skeptical, but my parents pressured me relentlessly. They said I was being selfish, said family helps family, made me feel guilty for hesitating. So I did it. I bought a nice used sedan, put the title in my name, and let her drive it. She never made a single payment. Not one. I had been covering the monthly installments for 12 months while she posted Instagram photos from expensive restaurants and weekend trips. When I asked her about the payments, she laughed and said I could afford it. My parents told me not to be petty about money. That car was legally mine. My name on the title, my name on the insurance, my credit on the line. I pulled up the DMV website and started the process I had researched months ago, but never had the courage to execute. I filled out the forms to report the vehicle as being returned to my possession. Then I called a towing company I had already vetted, one that operated 24 hours and could handle discrete situations. The dispatcher asked me to confirm the vehicle location and my ownership. I provided both. She told me they could have someone there within 2 hours. I said that would be perfect, right around sunrise. Then I made a few more calls. I contacted my insurance company and had the vehicle removed from my policy, effective immediately. I changed all my passwords and security settings on every account, anticipating the fallout. I even called my bank and put additional security holds on my accounts. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. The house had gone quiet. Everyone was asleep, probably dreaming about what a wonderful Christmas they had enjoyed at my expense. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the years of humiliation. The birthday parties where my sister got lavish gifts while I received practical items like socks. The graduations where my achievements were footnotes to her mediocre accomplishments. The family dinners where I was the punchline to every joke. The coffee incident was just the final drop in an overflowing bucket. Around 5:30 in the morning, I heard the low rumble of the tow truck. I got up and watched from my window as they loaded the sedan onto the flatbed. The driver was professional and quiet. Within 15 minutes, they were gone, and the driveway sat empty except for my parents' cars. I went back to bed and actually slept peacefully for the first time in months. The scream woke the entire neighborhood. My sister's shriek pierced through the house around 7:30. I heard her running down the stairs, heard the front door slam open, heard her yelling about her car being stolen. My parents joined her outside, their voices rising in panic and confusion. I took my time getting dressed. I brushed my teeth, combed my hair, even made my bed before heading downstairs. When I walked outside, all three of them were in the driveway, my sister on her phone with the police, my parents looking bewildered. My mother saw me first and demanded to know if I had seen anything. I told her I had slept wonderfully, asked what all the commotion was about. My sister spun around and started screaming at me, asking if I had something to do with her missing car. I smiled the same smile from the night before and explained calmly that it was not her car. It was my car. She never made a single payment in 12 months. The title was in my name, the registration was in my name, and I had simply reclaimed my property. The look on her face was worth every dollar I had spent on those payments. She started yelling that I could not do that it was theft, that she would have me arrested. I pulled out my phone and showed her the title, showed her the payment history with her name nowhere on it, showed her the texts where I had asked repeatedly about payments, and she had blown me off. My father tried to intervene, told me I was being ridiculous, said I needed to return the car immediately. I asked him if he remembered laughing yesterday morning when his daughter poured scalding coffee on me. I asked if he remembered all the times he had dismissed my feelings, minimized my accomplishments, excused her cruelty. He had no answer. My mother started crying, saying I was tearing the family apart over a stupid car. I corrected her. I told her I was setting boundaries after years of abuse, and if that tore the family apart, then perhaps it was never much of a family to begin with. The police arrived, and my sister immediately started making accusations. The officer listened patiently, then asked to see documentation. I provided everything: title, registration, payment records, insurance documents. My sister could not provide a single piece of paper proving ownership. The officer explained to her very clearly that this was a civil matter, not a criminal one. The vehicle belonged to the person whose name was on the title. If she wanted to pursue it, she would need to take me to small claims court, and even then, she would need to prove she had some agreement or equity in the vehicle. She had nothing. After the police left, my parents tried a different approach. They attempted guilt, telling me how much my sister needed that car for work, how I was ruining her life over pride. I reminded them that I had needed their support and love for 32 years, and they had failed to provide it. My sister tried threats, said she would never speak to me again. I told her that sounded wonderful. Then came the bargaining. She offered to start making payments, promised she would get her credit fixed and transfer the title within 6 months. I asked her why I should believe anything she said when she had already broken every promise she made. She had no answer. Finally, she tried appealing to shared history. She brought up childhood memories, reminded me of times we had been close as kids. I acknowledged those memories existed, but I also pointed out that she had spent the last 15 years systematically destroying any affection I might have had for her. My parents stood there looking helpless, finally seeing the monster they had created and enabled. My mother kept repeating that I was her son, that I should forgive. I told her forgiveness required remorse, and I had seen none. Update 1. The aftermath came swiftly and predictably. My sister launched a social media campaign painting herself as the victim. She posted long, tearful rants about how her cruel brother had stolen her car on Christmas morning, leaving out every relevant detail about ownership and payment history. Some of her friends flooded my messages with hate. I blocked them all. My parents tried to stage an intervention. They invited me to dinner 3 days later under the pretense of reconciliation. When I arrived, I found my sister there too, along with my aunt and uncle who had been briefed on only my sister's version of events. They spent an hour lecturing me about family values and forgiveness. I let them finish, then I laid out the truth. I showed them bank statements proving 12 months of payments. I showed them the text messages where my sister had blown me off and mocked me for asking about money. I showed them the title with only my name. I showed them photos of the coffee-soaked pants from Christmas morning. My aunt got quiet. My uncle looked uncomfortable. My parents tried to deflect, saying those details did not matter, that families should support each other unconditionally. I asked them why that philosophy only applied to me, why I was expected to sacrifice while my sister faced no consequences. Nobody had an answer. I told them I had sold the car. That was not entirely true yet, but I planned to do it within the week. My sister started crying again, those manipulative tears she had perfected over the years. This time they did not move me. My uncle, to his credit, asked my sister directly if she had made any payments. She stammered and deflected. He asked again, more firmly. She finally admitted she had not, but tried to justify it by saying I made more money and could afford it better. That was when my uncle surprised everyone. He told her she was wrong, that she had taken advantage of me, and that I had every right to take back what was mine. My aunt nodded slowly, clearly processing the reality versus the narrative she had been fed. My parents looked betrayed, as if their own allies had switched sides. My sister stormed out. The dinner ended awkwardly, but something had shifted. At least 2 family members now saw the truth. Update 2. 2 weeks after Christmas, I actually did sell the car. I got a fair price from a dealership and used the money to pay off the remaining loan balance. The leftover amount went straight into my savings account. It felt like closing a chapter. My sister found out through my mother and sent me a lengthy email. She detailed all the ways I had ruined her life, how she was now struggling to get to work, how she was losing opportunities because of my selfishness. She said I owed her the money from the sale since she had been the primary driver. I did not respond. Instead, I finally did something I should have done years ago. I went to therapy. I found a counselor who specialized in family dynamics and spent several sessions unpacking decades of dysfunction. She helped me see patterns I had normalized, behaviors I had excused, boundaries I had never established. She also helped me understand that what I did with the car was not revenge, not really. It was reclamation. I had not taken something from my sister. I had simply stopped giving her something she never deserved and never appreciated. My parents kept trying to broker peace. They suggested family counseling, which I agreed to attend under one condition. My sister had to acknowledge what she had done and offer a genuine apology. My mother said I was being unreasonable, that I was demanding too much. I told her that was exactly the problem with our family. Standards only applied to me. The counseling never happened. My sister ended up leasing a cheap car at an exorbitant interest rate because of her poor credit. She complained constantly on social media about her financial struggles, painting herself as a victim of circumstances beyond her control. Some people believed her narrative. The ones who mattered saw through it. I started pulling back from family events. I skipped Easter, claiming work obligations. I spent 4th of July with friends instead of at the family barbecue. My parents noticed and started leaving voicemails asking what was wrong, as if they genuinely could not understand why I might want distance. My mother finally called me directly in August. She cried and asked what she needed to do to fix things. I told her the truth. She needed to acknowledge the favoritism, the years of dismissing my feelings, the enabling of my sister's cruelty. She needed to understand that her daughter had poured coffee on me as a deliberate act of humiliation, and she had laughed. There was a long silence on the phone. Then she said something that broke what little remained of our relationship. She said I was being dramatic, that it had just been a joke, that I needed to let it go. I told her I already had let it go. I had let go of the expectation that she would ever see me as anything other than the scapegoat. I had let go of the hope that she might love both her children equally. I had let go of the family that existed only in my imagination. She started crying harder, but I felt nothing. That realization was both freeing and sad. Update 3. It has been almost a year since that Christmas morning. My life has changed in ways I never expected. The distance from my family gave me room to breathe, to grow, to figure out who I was without the constant weight of their dysfunction. I got a promotion at my primary job and was able to quit the second one. I started dating someone who actually values me, who listens when I talk, who does not dismiss my feelings. I took up hobbies I had abandoned because I was always too busy or too tired or too beaten down. My sister got engaged. I found out through Facebook. My mother called to tell me about the wedding, clearly expecting me to be excited. She mentioned that my sister wanted me to be there, that it would mean a lot to the family. I asked if my sister had ever apologized for Christmas. My mother sighed and said I was still holding on to that it was time to move forward. I told her moving forward meant moving on, and that was exactly what I had done. I did not attend the wedding. I heard through relatives that my sister was upset, that she had cried about my absence, that my parents were embarrassed by my no-show. Apparently, several family members had asked where I was, and my parents had to make excuses. Part of me felt guilty. The part that had been trained for decades to prioritize everyone else's feelings over my own. But a stronger part of me, the part that had been growing steadily over the past year, recognized that guilt for what it was, conditioning. My therapist helped me understand that I was grieving. Not grieving people who had died, but grieving the family I never had, the relationships that never existed outside my own hopes. That grief was real and valid, and it required processing, not dismissal. Around Thanksgiving, my father reached out. Not through my mother, but directly. He asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. I hesitated, but eventually agreed, curious about what he wanted to say. We met at a neutral location. He looked older than I remembered, tired. He started by saying he had been thinking about everything that happened, about how I had pulled away from the family. He said he missed me. I waited for more, for the actual acknowledgement, for the apology. It did not come. Instead, he asked what it would take for me to come back, to be part of the family again. As if it were that simple. As if showing up was all that mattered. I told him the truth. I said I needed him to recognize the years of unequal treatment, to acknowledge the pain he had caused by always choosing my sister over me, to understand that laughing when she humiliated me was a betrayal I could not forget. He looked uncomfortable. He said he never meant to make me feel less than, that parents make mistakes, that he loved both his children equally. Those empty words people say when they want forgiveness without accountability. I asked him if he remembered Christmas morning. He said he did. I asked him what he remembered about it. He mentioned my sister being upset about her car, the police coming, the family tension. I asked if he remembered the coffee, the deliberate act of pouring hot liquid on me while I sat defenseless, the cruel words, the laughter. He paused, then admitted he had forgotten about that part. That detail had somehow become irrelevant in his memory, edited out to make the narrative simpler, to make me the villain for overreacting rather than the victim of sustained abuse. That conversation ended our relationship. I realized then that they would never understand, never truly acknowledge what they had done. They had built their identity around my sister being special and me being the problem, and admitting the truth would require dismantling their entire worldview. I walked away from that coffee shop knowing it was probably the last time I would see my father. It hurt, but it also felt like closing a door that should have been closed long ago. Christmas came around again. I spent it with my girlfriend and her family. They were warm and welcoming, and for the first time in my life, I experienced what a functional family actually looked like. People who listened to each other, who celebrated everyone's achievements, who did not have designated scapegoats. My mother sent a text on Christmas morning asking if I was coming by. I did not respond. My sister posted photos of their celebration online, everyone smiling, pretending everything was fine. Nobody mentioned my absence in the captions. I sat on my girlfriend's couch, drinking coffee that nobody would throw on me, and I felt genuinely happy. Free. The revenge I had wanted that morning a year ago had transformed into something better, indifference. They no longer had power over me. Their opinions did not shape my self-worth. Their dysfunction was not my responsibility to fix. I had taken back my car, but more importantly, I had taken back my life. That empty driveway on Christmas morning had been the beginning of my real freedom.